Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another topic of Texas government. Today we will be talking about the Texas Executive Branch. Be aware, in Texas, the Texas Executive Branch consists of more than just the governor. While the governor is the executive official of the state, he has to share his power with various other individuals. The executive branch, as we will see further on in this lecture, deals with more than just one person. In Texas, the executive has to not only share his power, but is considered a very weak governor because of that shared power. So to start off, we will start off with the governor's formal qualifications. This is the qualifications that are required for the governor according to the Constitution. The formal qualifications are as follows. The governor has to be at least 30 years old, an American citizen, and a citizen of the state of Texas for at least 5 years. Now, there are informal criteria, and these are what we consider the WASP, a WASP, right? The White Anglo-Saxon Protestant male. This being because we have had only two female governors during the state's history. Usually, the governor is a middle-aged business person or attorney, meaning they are between the ages of 40 and 60. And of course, the person running for the governorship has to have money. Money is needed to have a successful campaign. Historically, party affiliation has also played a large role in Texas elections, with Democrats holding the governor's position for most of the existence of Texas. We had two Republican governors, the first Republican governors from 1867 until 1874. So throughout, or not throughout, but for a major part of the state's history, the Democratic Party was in power. It is not, of course, the Democratic Party of today as we know it, but it was the party in control. Now, Texas did not elect another Republican governor until 1979. Republicans have held the office of governor in Texas since 1995. Overall, Texas has had 48 governors, with 39 being Democrats and 6 being Republicans. Now, when it comes to tenure, removal, and succession, the governor serves a 4-year term with no term limits. Let me repeat that. The Texas governor serves a 4-year term with no term limits. Now, this has not always been the case, but it is the case now. The Constitution of 1869 removed term limits, and the Constitution of 1876 shortened the term to 2 years, but then an amendment in 1972 increased it back to 4 years. Now, the only way a Texas governor may leave office is through death, resignation, or impeachment. Like impeachment at the federal level, the Texas House of Representatives would have to vote on impeachment, and the Texas Senate would convict. If the governor leaves, the lieutenant governor becomes governor for the remainder of the term and may run for governor in the next election. So that is your only way, to succeed the governor, is to become the lieutenant governor. At the next election, you would have the lieutenant governor running if they would so like to be the actual governor, and anybody else that would like to run for the position of governor. Now, compensation. The Texas governor earns a salary of $150,000 a year, but it does come with other perks. One of those perks is the ability to live in the governor's mansion, which includes an expense account to keep it maintained and staffed. There is also a professional staff that is paid for by the state, which has offices in the capital. Now keep in mind, your staff or the staff to the governor would be very, very important. As the governor has limited time and many duties, he is involved in legislative affairs and appointments. So, much like Congress and the president, the governor relies on staff for advice, information, and assistance before making any decisions. You have to bear in mind that almost almost all offices in Texas are elected. The governor appoints people to various boards, commissions, and executive agencies, but also can appoint to judicial offices, meaning empty benches of the court. If a court becomes vacant due to death or resignation, the governor would then be able to appoint the successor judge until he or she can run for election the next um, in the next election cycle. Now, as governor, the governor does have some tools of persuasion. The governor does hold formal powers, meaning these are the powers guaranteed to the governor by law. In other words, the Constitution. The governor has the power of the veto. The governor has 10 days, not counting Sundays, to sign a bill into law. If the bill is not signed, the bill becomes a law. However, the governor vetoes the bill if he returns the bill to the legislature with objections. If the governor vetoes the bill, the legislature may override the veto with a 2/3 vote from both chambers of the Texas legislature. Unlike the president, the governor does have the line item veto. The line item veto is another formal power that the governor has. This allows the governor to veto funds for specific items or projects without killing the entire bill. Like a regular veto, the legislature may override a line item veto. Another tool of persuasion is message power. Now, the Constitution requires the governor to deliver a State of the State address. This allows the governor to be in front of the public and state what he or she believes to be an important issue for the next legislative session. Keep in mind, if the legislature is opposed to this issue, this allows the citizen of the state to know where the governor stands and put increased pressure on the legislature to come into step with the plan the governor has proposed. At the same time, it allows the citizens of the state of Texas to know not just what the governor is proposing, but to know just how well the governor believes the state is doing or what our deficiencies are. It is basically the governor laying out the plan for the state for the coming year. Now, the governor also has fact-finding commissioners. Governors, along with the legislature, can appoint a blue ribbon commission. This group will consist of influential citizens, politicians, and members of concerned special interest groups. These groups can usually look at political ideas that are under consideration and do research to see if these ideas have strong public acceptance. These groups can also be used in an attempt to increase political acceptance of an already proposed idea. Now, as we continue with persuasion, there are informal powers that can also be used by the governor. These informal powers are those that are not enumerated, meaning they are not written in the Constitution, but they still exist due to historical use. The threat of a veto. By threatening a veto, the governor is not fond of, it can usually create a compromise. If the legislature knows that the governor is opposed to a particular bill and that he has already threatened, or that she has already threatened, a veto, then the legislature can use this threat and the governor can as well, to reach a compromise on the proposed bill without actually killing the bill. This allows for bargaining sessions. So, bargaining allows the governor to gain support for the governor's legislative agenda or to firm resistance to something that the governor opposes. These bargaining sessions are going to occur prior to the legislature coming back into work every other year. So that there is pre-session bargaining taking place because we have such a shortened period for our legislature to be in session. These bargaining sessions become very important so that both the governor and the legislature know where they stand with their particular legislative agenda. Now, special sessions. Special sessions can be both formal and informal. Now, the formal is the sense that there has to be a specific reason for a special session. If there has not been a subject addressed to the satisfaction of the governor, he may call a special session. Special sessions last no more than 30 days in length and may only address that specific subject that the governor has called the session for. It is informal in the sense that events that non-legislative subjects, confirmations of appointments, resolutions, impeachments, and amendments may also be considered even though the governor did not call for them, did not call the special session for that particular thing. However, most special sessions will be considered formal because they are being called in order to resolve a specific issue. Now, as a governor, there are executive tools of persuasion, meaning there are specific things that the governor is able to do according to the Constitution. Now, the Texas Constitution makes the office of governor a plural executive. This means there are numerous other people in the executive branch with their own responsibilities. We elect these other members of the executive branch, such as the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, and the comptroller. And since we elect them, they have no allegiance nor the responsibility to answer to the governor. As I said, the fragmentation of the executive branch makes the governor one of the weakest in the nation and leaves few bargaining tools to them. Now, the governor, as I have stated, does have appointive powers. These appointments allow the governor to place allies in strategic locations in state government. This is a critical asset in his or her efforts to establish and carry out policies. Now, governors can also use the appointment power to reward political supporters, a practice known as patronage. Supporters can be awarded government jobs which can also be used to curry favor with rival political leaders and office holders. These uses of political appointments are mutually reinforcing. Rewards for past support are likely to increase future support from appointed office holders. Now, appointive powers by the governor can also be used to establish a political tone. In other words, the governor can use the appointments to signal his or her intention to pursue a particular political or policy strategy. Now, the governor's appointment power is limited by the requirement that 2/3 of the Senate has to agree on his appointments. The confirmation process is also shaped by the unwritten tradition of senatorial courtesy. This custom allows the senator of the district in which a nominee lives to effectively veto the appointment. Now, there is also a further limitation to the governor's appointment power. Most appointees of the various boards and commissions serve staggered terms, meaning the term is 6 years, but they are not all up for renewal at the same time. Texas law does not grant governors the ability to fire their predecessors' appointees. So, unless there is an unusual number of deaths or resignations, it will be several years into a governor's term before most boards and commissions are controlled by his or her appointees. Now, removal powers. Once appointed, it is very hard for a governor to remove someone. While they can remove members of the executive office and a few minor administrators for no reason, a governor cannot remove his or her own appointments to boards or commissions without showing cause and getting approval from 2/3 of the legislature. Now, the governor serves as chief of state. This means that the governor is the symbol for the state of Texas. There are a number of things that the governor can do which are just pomp and circumstance. For example, one year Rick Perry was the commencement speaker at a graduation ceremony at Stephen F. Austin University. So, by participating in such pomp and circumstance, it can increase visibility and popularity of the governor. There are three facets to the chief of state role which supplement the other powers, formal and informal. The governor is a member of multi state organizations and conferences. This helps build relationships between Texas and other states. Two, it also helps gain national grant and aid programs. This means that Texas has an office in Washington, D.C., which is the Office of the State Federal Relations, and it will help the governor receive more money from D.C. in the form of grants. Now, it is the governor's appointment to this office, and they are then the director of this office, which will be responsible for getting money from the federal government to the state. The governor also has the ability to request federal aid in the event of an emergency. Think back to natural disasters such as Hurricane Harvey or prior to then Hurricane Ike, in which cases the governor has called for a declared emergency for the state. Once the declaration has been made by the governor, then the federal authorities can act and FEMA is dispatched to our area. So this is part of being chief of state. Now, budget powers. The governor is considered the chief budget officer of the state. This means the governor receives information from each state agency requesting their appropriations for the next 2 years. So each state agency and department has to send the governor their budget requests. Now remember, because the legislature only meets every other odd year, it is very important for these agencies to make sure that their budgets are what is projected for a 2-year term. The governor is then responsible for putting the budget together, taking into account all of the estimates from all of the different agencies, and estimating the income that the state will receive, at which point the budget is then given to the state legislature. It is important to realize the Legislative Budget Board does the same thing, but the Budget Board's budget is usually more influential. Now, when it comes to law enforcement powers, the governor has very little law enforcement power. At the state level, we have the Texas Rangers and the Department of Public Safety. At the local level, we have sheriffs, constables, which are both elected, and the local city police chief. The only power the governor has over the state level law enforcement is an appointment power. The Rangers and DPS are both under the Director of the Department of Public Safety. The Director is appointed by the Public Safety Commission. There are 3 members of the Public Safety Commission who are appointed by the Governor to 6-year staggered terms. So this means that the Governor has no direct relation to the actual appointment of the Director. So it is the actual commission who does the appointing. Now, military powers. The Governor is considered the Commander-in-Chief of the state military, such as the Texas National Guard and the Texas State Guard. The Governor can declare an area to be under martial law and send units of the militia to keep the peace and protect public property. Also, Article 4, Section 7 of the Texas Constitution allows the Governor to employ the state militia to execute the laws of the state, to suppress insurrection, and to repeal invasions. Now, bear in mind, the Texas National Guard can be activated by the federal government, and if that happens, control of the National Guard passes to the President. The Texas State Guard is a backup unit and can only be called to duty by the Governor and can only be called to duty if the President has taken the Texas National Guard. Now, clemency powers. The Constitution of 1876 gave the Governor very broad clemency powers, which are the clemency powers being the power to grant relief from criminal punishment. The Governor could do this by granting pardons, paroles, and the ability to grant reprieves. However, in 1936, the citizens of the state of Texas passed a constitutional amendment creating a Board of Pardons and Paroles. Most of the clemency powers were transferred from the Governor to the Board. It is now up to the Board to grant, revoke, and determine conditions for parole, and they are the ones who make clemency recommendations to the Governor. The Governor has to follow these recommendations. Now, they can grant less clemency than recommended by the Board, but not more. This was done because these powers could be misused by the Governor. In order to keep that from happening, the citizens of the state of Texas amended the Constitution and created the Board of Pardons and Paroles. Now, today, the Governor is the one in charge of appointing the board members. But remember, board members are not all appointed in one shot. All of their terms are staggered to keep from having these issues of misuse and having the Governor use these boards for his own personal gain. Now, what follows are slides containing information on each of the executives that are found in the Texas Executive Branch. So first we have the Governor. Our current Governor is Greg Abbott. As I said, he is the Chief Executive, the Commander-in-Chief of the Texas National Guard. Of course, he has the ability to sign or veto bills, and he can convey special sessions of legislature. It is also his job to have a State of the State report. These links, the blue links, will take you to the page for each of the executives in the branch. So be sure to follow through and check out their web pages. Go through the website and see if there's anything of interest, and then let me know what you think if you have any questions. Here is our current Lieutenant Governor. It is Dan Patrick. He is the head of the Senate in the legislature. He assumes powers and duties of the Governor if the Governor is unable to serve. But be aware, he is the head of the Senate in the legislature. Our Attorney General, Ken Paxton, is the Chief Legal Officer. Primarily, his duties are on the civil law enforcement and, of course, to offer opinions to state and local entities on questions that may arise. The Comptroller of Public Accounts is the Chief Tax Administrator, Accounting Officer, and Revenue Estimator. He is the state CPA. Now, the Commissioner of the Texas General Land Office here is George P. Bush. He is in charge of the state-owned lands, including mineral rights, leasing, the sale of state lands, and of course, he is also considered the administrator of the Veterans Land Board. If there are any Texas vets out there, be aware that the state of Texas offers veterans uh, loans to purchase home sites or property, land, and it is with interest rates that are right currently 7.25% with 5% down. So if anybody is interested, please follow through to the General Land Office's website or go to the Veteran Land Board as they have their own website. Now, the Commissioner of Agriculture, Sid Miller. Now, he actually has a very important role because it deals with consumer protection, meaning you. Next time you're at the gas pumps filling up your car or truck, look at the pump you are using. It should have a sticker that has the state seal on it, indicating that the pump has been checked for accuracy. This is the accuracy in measuring the amount of gas that is being pumped into your car. You do not want to be pumping gas from a station or from a pump that is not functioning properly. You will end up with less gas than you are being charged for. The same thing goes for other weights and measures, such as the scales you find at grocery stores. It is also the Commissioner of Agriculture's job to protect agricultural crops and to facilitate trade, not just within the state, but outside of the state of Texas with internationals, entities, other companies, or nations. Now, the Commissioner of Agriculture is also the one who administers the National School Lunch and Breakfast Program in Texas. If you attended school at a public district in the state of Texas, chances are good that you either had free breakfast or had free or reduced lunch, or new students who were qualified for those programs. This is the department within the state of Texas that administers those types of programs that are available to students. It is also the commissioner's job to develop economic interest in the state, bring in new businesses, and basically market the state outside of our borders. Okay, so we have come to the Secretary of State. Now, the current Secretary of State is Ruth R. Hughes. She was appointed by the governor. Now, remember, the Secretary of State is the one executive position that is an appointment, meaning this person is not elected to this office. They are not elected. However, the Secretary of State is responsible for the administration of state election laws. So every time you go to vote, it is because of the Secretary of State's efforts in these elections. Now, the Secretary of State is also the office that handles corporate charters and processes extraditions. If you are ever going to incorporate a business or have a charitable foundation, or a limited liability partnership, anything that deals with corporate charters or opening a new actual incorporated business, you would have to file all of your paperwork with the Secretary of State's office. Now, when it comes to processing extraditions, if somebody that has committed a crime in a different jurisdiction outside of the state of Texas is apprehended within the state, then the Secretary of State's office is the one that would process the paperwork to handle the extradition. If you have any questions on what else the Secretary of State's office does, please follow through on the link and let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I hope that this has explained the plurality of the Texas Executive Branch, and I look forward to our next session. As always, if you have any questions, please email me. Until then, y'all have a good one.